Hey there, and welcome back to another episode of Heimler's History. Today, we're diving deep into the evolution of U.S. immigration laws and attitudes from the Gilded Age through to the post-World War II era. We'll take a look at how these laws shaped America's demographic, economic, and cultural landscapes. So if you're ready to get your brain cows milked, let's get to it. Alright, let's rewind to the Gilded Age. Spanning from the 1870s to the early 1900s, this was a time of rapid industrialization, economic growth, and a massive influx of immigrants. People came to the US seeking better opportunities, mostly coming from Southern and Eastern Europe, as well as some from Asia. Now, while this wave of immigration provided the labor force needed for industrial growth, it also sparked a lot of anxiety and uncertainty among native-born Americans. Concerns ranged from job competition to cultural differences, which ultimately led to stigmas being formed against these immigrants. One of the earliest significant pieces of restrictive legislation was the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882. This act specifically targeted Chinese laborers, barring them from entering the United States, as well as preventing them from becoming U.S. citizens if they were already inside the country. This was the first law implemented to prevent a specific ethnic group from immigrating into the United States. This act was a direct response to the economic fears and racial prejudice held by many Americans. Many Americans blamed Chinese immigrants for declining wages and job shortages, which was a direct result of their need to work. Chinese immigrants were desperate for jobs, as they needed money to send back to their families overseas, even if it was minimum wage. This meant that the immigrants would work for dirt cheap for long periods of time to sustain their foreign families. Moving into the early 20th century, the Progressive Era brought about more changes. The Immigration Act of 1917 introduced a literacy test for immigrants over 16 years old and increased the tax paid by new immigrants upon arrival. This law also created the Asiatic Barred Zone, which excluded immigrants from much of Asia and the Pacific Islands, except for Japan and the Philippines. The Gentlemen's Agreement of 1907 already limited Japanese immigration, and Filipinos were considered American nationals. The literacy test and barred zones were aimed at restricting the flow of immigrants deemed undesirable by American standards, but these preventative measures weren't enough for some lawmakers. Enter the Immigration Act of 1924, also known as the Johnson-Reed Act. This act is crucial for understanding the mid-20th century immigration landscape. It established national origins quota, drastically reducing the number of immigrants allowed from Southern and Eastern Europe and banning immigration from Asia entirely. The quotas were based on the 1890 census, favoring immigrants from Northern and Western Europe. This was a clear attempt to preserve the ethnic composition of the United States and limit as many undesirable immigrants as possible. The usage of the 1890 census demonstrates the inherent racism of the time, as purposely using an old census would mean that more immigrants would come from Europe and less from Asia. The Act's provision, no alien ineligible to citizenship shall be admitted to the United States, effectively banned Asians because they were ineligible for citizenship under existing laws. This solidified the racial hierarchy in U.S. immigration policy, placing Asian immigrants on rock bottom. Now, let's talk about the economic and social impacts of the Act. The restrictive quotas reduced the population of the labor pool, which had mixed effects on the American society. Industries that relied on immigrant labor, like agriculture and manufacturing, faced shortages in production and revenue. On the other hand, it also led to the stabilization of wages for some American workers, addressing one of the major concerns that fueled nativist sentiments. Socially, the Act reinforced a sense of American identity, rooted in Northern and Western European ancestry. However, this tends to marginalize other groups. Specifically, this period saw the growth of organizations like the Ku Klux Klan, which championed these exclusionary ideas. World War II marked a turning point. The need for solidarity against the Axis powers and the horrors of the Holocaust began to shift public opinion. The blatant racism in immigration policies started to seem incompatible with the ideals that America was fighting for. During the war, programs like the Bracero program brought Mexican laborers into the U.S. to fill labor shortages, showing that immigration policy could be flexible when it served national interests. But it wasn't until after the war that major legislative changes began to take shape. Enter the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1965, also known as the Hart-Celler Act. This act was a game changer. It abolished the national origins quota system, which was seen as discriminatory and out of step with contemporary American values. The new law focused on family reunification and attracting skilled workers, opening the doors to immigrants from Asia, Africa, and Latin America. This dramatically changed the demographic makeup of the United States. By shifting the criteria for immigration, the Hart-Celler Act acknowledged the contributions of all people, regardless of their national origin. It marked a significant step towards a more inclusive society. Let's talk demographics. Post-1965, the U.S. saw a surge in immigrants from Asia and Latin America. This influx brought immense cultural diversity, enriching American society with new traditions, languages, and ideas. Cities like Los Angeles, New York, and Houston became cultural melting pots, reflecting the diverse backgrounds of their residents. The rise of multiculturalism reshaped American culture, from cuisine to entertainment to politics. Economically, these new waves of immigrants filled crucial roles in the workforce, from tech industries to healthcare, driving innovation and growth in their respective industries. They also helped counteract the aging native-born population, contributing to the sustainability of social services. Today, the debate over immigration continues. Policies fluctuate, reflecting ongoing tensions between inclusion and restriction. Understanding the history of U.S. immigration laws helps us grasp the complexities of these discussions. While we've made strides towards a more inclusive society, challenges still remain. The path forward requires balancing security, economic needs, and humanitarian responsibilities. So, what's the takeaway? U.S. immigration laws have evolved significantly, reflecting broader social, economic, and political currents. From exclusionary policies of the Gilded Age to the more inclusive approaches post 1965, these laws have profoundly shaped American society. Thanks for joining me on this journey through history. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more. Heimler, out.